Sarah Brummitt.
Well, hello, Miss Heather. How are we?
Oh, I'm very good. Shall I give you the power to share some slides?
How completely marvellous. That would be incredible.
I am going to hand over now to my friend Sarah Brummitt.
Brilliant. Heather, thank you very much indeed. Everyone, good afternoon. Lovely to meet you. Lovely to see so many of you on camera. And I'm going to encourage you to stay on camera and get involved in the conversation that we're about to have. Let me introduce myself. My name is Sarah Brummitt. What I do is run my own global learning and development business from London. And what I'm really looking forward to today is a conversation about one of my favourite topics, which is how do you communicate in a way to influence other people to get them to do what you want? So let me get straight into what that conversation with you today is designed to achieve. First of all, over the course of the next 88 minutes, this is an opportunity for you to do a number of things. First of all, I'm going to be clear on why this is really hard to do well in our business, in our organizations, and in this environment here, particularly virtually. And I'm going to talk about why it's even more essential than ever. I'm going to get massively practical then about how can you get people who think well-being is kind of your job or it's HR, it's potentially light and fluffy, we already do stuff, let's not worry about it. How do you get people that may not view this priority as their priority? How do we get them on board, engaged, and get them to support what we want? And then what I'm going to invite us to do as we move towards the tail end of our conversation is get you to action. You are not going to be listening to me crash through tons of slides, everyone. Delighted that you're on camera. Please do stay on camera. Please use the functionality of Zoom, hands up, comments in chat, reactions buttons. Come on mic, talk to me. And I'm certainly going to be talking to you through a number of different conversations and activities. I'll make sure with Heather that I share the digital assets, which is a copy of these slides in workbook form. So anything you see on the screen, know that you don't need to scribble furiously. I know the session's being recorded. Some people like to have another visual way of recalling information. You will get it. And fundamentally, what I'm going to invite us to do is enjoy ourselves, because this topic isn't just relevant to us in our current role and in our current organization. It's relevant throughout the duration of our career. This is career-long capability. Wherever you are and whatever stage of your career you're at, being able to reach people, engage people, and change people around your message, never been more difficult, never been more essential to learn to do well. So let's get stuck in and enjoy ourselves. I said that I would start with why this is essential. When I was talking with Heather about what might make this session useful for you this afternoon, what became very apparent was the challenge, whether you're in the private sector, in the public sector, whether your organization tends to view organizational stress risk as something that's a carrot or a stick with which to beat you. The challenge facing everyone is, how on earth does this priority, your priority, become others' priorities, particularly when it's people who own the budget, who own the decision-making responsibility, and or maybe more senior in your business? Here's their reality, that the reason why it's important for us to be even more effective in the way that we engage people is because this is what you're up against. Let me give you a moment to have a read of that. That's what you're up against, team. And often we don't have very long before people decide I do or I don't have time for this now. So let's make our conversation about engaging other people, senior leaders, business sponsors, colleagues across our business, to be more engaged in the conversation about HSE. Let's bring it home by asking you either in the chat function or just put your hand up and let's hear from you on microphone, please, as we sit here today. And you think about some of the people you need to engage in your organization. Either in a few words in chat or just put your hand up and I'll come to you and spotlight you. What are some of the ideas, issues, challenges, topics, which as we sit here at the moment, you're thinking, goodness gracious me, I really wish I could get others in my business more engaged around this. What might that be for you? Let's get you thinking about something that's relevant for you now. Fabaroni, I can see chat coming through. Thank you very much indeed. So, Alex, engagement service employee forums, groovy. Lawrence, organizational stress risk assessment and action. Fantastic. Thank you both. Let's keep them coming. Rosie, your hand is up. Fabulous, please.
Put simply, it's getting the organizational stress risk assessment and the actions from that to the top of the business agenda, because I do believe supporting people to be in the right headspace is the key to unlocking performance.
You are in exactly the right place. So to get the notion of an organizational stress risk assessment to the top of other people's priorities, fabulous. Rosie, thank you. And I appreciate you enormously for being brave enough to come on microphone and share. Thank you for so doing. Let me get your hand. Beautiful. Thank you very much indeed. Anything else that's different or similar from people, please? I would love for you to have a topic that's relevant now. How many of you, just do a dynamic thumb, based on what Rosie just said, how many of you relate to the challenge that Rosie just described? How many of you are thinking, yep, that's true for me? Claire's giving me a double thumbs up. Same for Alex, same for Sarah, same for George, same for Wellbeing. Lovely, lovely. Kerry, thank you. Brilliant. Sharon, loving your work. So the point is that for all of you, as I go through these concepts, two things will happen. Number one, I'm going to give you some concepts and then get you to apply them. Number two, if we take a real relevant message like the challenge that just has been perfectly described, what I want us to walk away with before I come to Sarah is an improved or enhanced message to take back to the business. Sarah, your hand went up and went down. Just checking.
No, I think the thing as well is trying to get it to be seen that it's not just two people's responsibilities managing stress. That's really kind of the big crux to start this conversation. Is it's not just health and safety, HR, it's everyone's responsibility for managing stress within the organisation.
Perfect. Sarah, I'm grateful to you for sharing that, because what you're giving me is an example of a different or a more nuanced type of message. And the more you make the message that's on your mind one that's relevant for you as we sit here today, the more value that all of you will get out of these tools. So in the example that Sarah's just shared, it's this notion that, look, this isn't just the job of one or two folk inside this organization, it's the responsibility of everybody. Brilliant. Those messages, those challenges in terms of getting people to engage with you, I would love for you to keep them. So with that thought in mind, i.e. not thought of me gurning at you on the camera, but actually the thought of being able to engage people to make your priorities theirs, to make your ideas important to them, to make your responsibilities their responsibility. What we are talking about today is creating messages, creating communication that fundamentally does this. Okay, so I think what I was just talking about was the notion of two words to draw your attention to. The influencing word was where I know I was lingering before the broadband momentarily cut out. What I was just saying was that what we're trying to do when we influence people is change them. So we change them from, by way of example, some of the words on the left-hand side to some of the words on the right. There could be other words that I could use for before and after. The other word, if I go back a slide, is the word inspire. Now, when I use the word inspire, everyone, I don't mean walk on music and dry ice. That's not what I mean. What I mean is that we reach people. And to Sarah's example earlier, we help people think, gosh, I want to be part of what it means to really represent wellness in our organisation. And I recognise I've got a responsibility to manage some of the stress risk that might be associated with me and my team. And I'm not going to do that in August of next year. I'm going to do it now. So the inspire word means not I'll get to this when I've got time and when other things are less pressing. Inspire means, and I'm going to do something starting now. And engaging communication does both things. It changes people, i.e. influence, but it also inspires people, i.e. I'll make this a higher priority. How your leaders, it's like us, how people spend their time and how people spend their money tells the world what they care about. They can say, yeah, sure, no, I really do care about organizational stress risk assessments. Okay, good. How much time have you spent on it? Well, basically none. Well, fundamentally, we don't really care about it. And so therefore, what makes communication and messaging both influential and inspirational? You change people and you motivate them to do something about it. What I'm going to offer for you are the 7 most brilliant, most effective, most impactful things that can transform messages. I'll take each of them in turn, and as I share them, everyone, I'll say this. Everything I talk about in relation to communication is easy in theory. In theory. You'll look at the concept and think, yeah, that sounds pretty straightforward to me. The difficulty comes in the rigor with which we apply it, how we do it. So we'll take them in turn, then you're going to get to play with them. 7 components. Let's kick off where most communication falls over. What do I mean by being clear on your objective? Very often what I hear when I'm working with HSE professionals, and not just HSE professionals, it could be procurement, it could be marketing, it could be supply chain, it could be logistics. When they're looking to engage the business with their agenda, with their priorities, with the things that are important to them, what I hear a lot of is language like this. Well, I'm going to give them an update. Well, I'm going to explain a tool to them. Well, I'm going to explain the latest legal requirements of our business. Okay, great. For what purpose are you giving an update? Explaining the legal requirements, explaining a tool. Most communication falls over through a real lack of clarity with regard to, by the end of the message, what do you want to achieve? Not the end of the project, not the end of how we're going to do HSE this year, not the end of the risk assessment, but by the end of this message. And there are only ever 3 categories of objective, everyone, for a communication. I want you to make a decision, yes or no, green or red. We'll do it in the UK, but we won't do it in Europe. I'm after a decision by the end of my communication. That's one category. A second category is action. Now, too often here, it's very loose language. I need your support. I need your engagement. I need your sponsorship. Yes, yes, yes. And then what do people do? Leave the conversation and do precisely nothing. So very specifically, what is the action I'm asking for from you? I would throw out language which is like, I need your engagement. People leave the call, do nothing about it. I need your support. Certainly. They leave the meeting, do nothing about it. It has to be very specific. The third thing is get a commitment. That means they need to give you something. And by commitment, I mean they need to give you their time, and or they need to give you some money, and or they need to give you some headcount or some resources. So commitment means I, as the audience, have to give you, as the person communicating this message, I have to give you something. Now, before I get you thinking about what the objective is for your message, let me put something else on the table for you, everyone, and I'm going to use a metaphor to explain my point. If you imagine my hands are a bit like the alphabet, A to Z, sometimes our objectives are too big for the amount of time we've got with that individual. What do I mean by that? I'll give a very simple example. Let's say that I'm an HSE manager and you are a new ops director or a new managing director, whatever it may be. We've never met before, but I'm going to tell you all about organisational stress risk assessments. I've got 20 minutes, and by the end of it, I'm going to be asking for £100,000. That's like going from A to Z. Nobody will get 100 grand in 20 minutes, and we've never worked together before. So the point I'm looking to make here, everyone, when it relates to objectives is this. Sometimes we need to break our objectives down. The size of our message objective should fit the amount of time and strength of the relationship that I've got with the people I'm in front of. So rather than trying to go from A to Z, maybe what I need to get to by the end of this message is A to D. Then I'm going to get, next time we meet, from D to P. Next time we meet, I'm going to get from P to Y. And then the next time we meet, I'm going to get from Y to Z. So it seems very simple. Have a clear objective, everybody. But this is where most communication falls over. So let me give you a moment to reflect, and let's get you going in the chat function, please. In relation to that message, whether it's this notion of elevating the priority of organisational stress risk assessments, whether it's the notion of inviting people to be inspired to take more ownership for HSE and responsibility in their business, or maybe it's something else. As you think about that message on your mind, what's your objective for it? Have a think. Let's get keyboard warrior going. Drop your answers in chat, everyone, please. What's the objective for your message? Graham, you are the first cab out of the rank. For processes to not be a tick box exercise. Graham, thank you. So what I would love to know and invite you to gently think about is, so what does that mean? You know, specifically, do you want a decision from me? Do you want an action from me? Or do you want some form of commitment from me? And if the commitment, which may be what you're alluding to there, is that, what does that mean in terms of action? Graham, I'm grateful to you for kicking us off. Alex, we can't engage the business on, oosh, that's just jumped up, stress risk assessment, so we understand what the current levels of stress are. So we need to start with some sort of engagement survey to understand first. Alex, so I think what I'm hearing there is that what you're after is a decision by the business to support, in the first instance, an engagement survey. That's sounding like a decision, and there may be some commitment, i.e. time and or resources stroke money to support it. So that's a bit like my A to C kind of analogy earlier with the alphabet. Thank you. Isabel, reduce work-related illness. I'd love to know, what is that in terms of an objective? By the end of the message, this is message objective, everyone. It's not, that's the overall objective for wellness in my business. So think about, I want a decision, or I want action, or I want some form of commitment. Lawrence, improve the safety and well-being of our team because it improves productivity and reduces loss. Lawrence, I want to know what you want by the end of the message, you good person. If that's ultimately what we want to achieve, by the end of communicating this message, think of my A to Z analogy. What do you want me to either decide first of all, do first of all, or agree to give you first of all? That's commitment. Catherine, decision and budget. Lovely. Decision to do what, and budget, how much do you need? Don't expect you to share it here, but think about that. Rosie, we'll need commitment to act on the results of the survey once we have it. Great. Okay. And again, what I'd be curious about there, and I gently push everyone around message objective. I gently push here for rigor because this is where most messages fall over. Wasn't clear, didn't realize. So what happens is after we've communicated it, not much, nothing happens. L, thank you. Overall, for the organization to deliver its people strategy, become a world-class employer. So that sounds like a journey, L. I'm wondering what's the first few steps. So to become a world-class employer, we're not going to get there in one meeting and one conversation. That's like getting from A to Z. So where do you want to get us to first of all? Through this message, where do you want to get the business to? Decision, action, commitment. Sarah, take action. Understand managing stress is a legal responsibility. Commitment from managers to be able to set up some forums. Workers to understand work stress. So it sounds like a number of actions in there, Sarah. And again, what I would love is, right, what do you want to do first? By when? Who's going to be involved? Because that means time. And that's a commitment from the business, isn't it? So that's commitment and action. They're coming through. Sarah, thank you for yours. Margot, thank you for yours. Wellme, thank you for yours. Deb, I want you to take the lead on this. Which means what exactly? Everyone, this first tool, the clarity and the rigor of what you're asking for by the end of your communication has to be very specific. It is either a decision, if so what, specifically, and or its action, if so what, specifically, and or its commitment, time, money, headcount. Claire, I'd like your sponsorship to form a WP steering group with the ultimate purpose to complete an organizational strategy. Right, okay, there are some actions coming through. Lucy, thank you for yours. Everyone, I linger here because if we don't get this right, everything after it doesn't work in your messaging. Tool number one of persuasive messages is rigor around the message objective, not the initiative objective, not your role in the business objective, not your vision for HSC or organizational stress risk assessment. It's by the end of this message. Tool number one. Here's tool number two. For those of you that have got small children, or if you remember when you were a little child yourself, the question that is most often heard asked as we raise kids is, why do I need to do that? Why do I need to look left and right before I cross the road? Why do I need to clean my teeth at least twice a day, etc., etc., etc. The point about tool number two is, and I'm going to go to Google and I'm going to put a link in the chat. The link is to the third most watched TED Talk of all time. I'll put the link in the chat now, everyone, and just give me a thumbs up if you've come across this or seen it before. How many of you have come across Simon Sinek's Start With Why TED Talk? I see some thumbs up, I see some nodding, I see some people thinking, I'm not quite sure what this person's talking about. Everyone, whether you have or if you haven't seen this TED Talk, it was 2009, it was in Puget Sound, and even though it was, gosh, 16 years ago, it is the third most watched TED Talk of all time. It is by an academic, a researcher, a leadership development expert, an entrepreneur, who is called Simon Sinek, and he just used a flip chart, no fancy schmancy slides. He just stood there with a flip chart and talked. And what his research as an academic revealed quite simply is this. When it comes to the way in which we communicate with other people, when we're trying to influence them, motivate them, engage them, enthuse them, get them to do what we want, fundamentally, what Sinek said is the most engaging and persuasive communicators of all time, whether we draw on the world of business, social change, entrepreneurship, the way that they communicate to engage others is fundamentally different to everybody else. And the way in which it is different is as follows. That what they do is start with the why question first. Why should I care? Why is this a priority? Why do I need to know this? Why is this important to our business? Why should I spend money on it? Why is this something that would be useful to me? That we should start by explaining that first before we get into the detail. One of the most common mistakes, not just in our world, but any part of the value chain, is that, let's say I'm trying to introduce a new process or a new project. I'll tell you, well, this is what the project is, this is how the project works, and this is why it's important to our business. What cynics said is, if we put the why at the end, everyone stops listening and doesn't care. The why should start at the beginning. In other words, when you're thinking about communicating with your colleagues across your organization, the kinds of why questions that we should be looking to answer are some of the ones you see on the screen. In other words, why are you telling me this? Because you're the HSE lead, I'm not. Why are you telling me this? Why is this a problem? We don't need to go and look for potential stress risk in our organization. We'll just take care of it if it materializes. Why should I care about that? Because actually you're measured on making sure our people feel a high level of well-being and are engaged. I don't need to worry about that. I'm not measured on it. Why should I spend money and time to fix it? What's in it for me and my team and my organization? So tool number 2, everyone, in your messaging, before we get into the detail of what you want your employee engagement survey to be, or how you want an organizational stress risk assessment to work, before we get into any of that, don't go anywhere near it until you've articulated why this is a priority, why you should care about this, why this is critical to our business, why we can't wait, why I need you involved. We should make that clear first, and the science backs it up. We're not good on detail if we don't understand the reason why, first of all. Full stop. We're just not. We're not good on detail. So hold that thought, because I'll be coming back to you in a couple of minutes to ask you what your whys are. Number 1, message clarity in terms of the objective. Number 2, always start your messaging with why. Why this? Why now? Why here? Why is it a priority? Why should you care? Why should we invest money about it? Why is it your responsibility, not just mine? We have to answer these why questions early, not at the end, when we've explained what it is and how it's going to work bit is. That's tool number 2, everyone. Here comes tool number 3. Which in the world of influence and persuasion is genuinely one of the most effective tools. And it's called a narrative structure. Now, you might well be thinking, what the heck is a narrative structure? And a narrative structure borrows from the world of storytelling. It borrows from authors and playwrights and screenwriters who are in the business of engaging our attention for massively long periods of time and causing us not to be distracted by our equipment, and for us to have a really emotional connection with the experience of the story they've just had. A narrative structure is very simply that your message is forevermore always split into 3 key chapters, 3 key sections of your message, 3 key sections, and that each section has got a chapter heading. If you think about what authors do, or screenwriters do, or playwrights do, they do not write their story or their TV show or their play. They do not write it or create it in a linear way. And all I mean by that is they don't start at the beginning on chapter 1 or act 1 or scene 1 or page 1, dialogue 1, and then write their story finishing with the end. They don't do it like that. What they do is they identify the 3 key chapter headings of your message. 3 key chapter headings. Now, you might well be thinking, well, why 3? Why is it 3? Because if you went online now and put in what's the typical structure of a play, for example, it'll actually give you 4. So why on earth am I right and say do it in 3? Here's why. Because 3 is everywhere. It's everywhere in our culture. It's everywhere in our society. I'll start throwing out some examples. You add to them in chat. How many things can you think of that are communicated in 3 parts? I'll start in the world of HSC. Mind the gap. I'm a Londoner. See it, say it, sort it. Hands, face, space. Stay at home, protect the NHS, save lives. There was a reason why throughout COVID, those messages came in 3 parts. Those of you that have been in your car today will have probably encountered traffic lights. Red, amber, green. Gold, silver, bronze. On your marks, get set, go. Lights, camera, action. Save our souls. I love you. On your marks, get set, go. You need help, you dial 999. In the US, it's 911. There's a reason why it's always 3. We give people 3 cheers, not 4, 5, 6, or 7. We talk about a hat trick, 3 strikes and you're out, 3 goals in football, 3 wickets in cricket, although I'm a cricket fan, that's highly unlikely if you follow England. And 3 strikes and you're out is, of course, baseball. I could go on and on. There's 3 primary colours. Most faith, religion, or deity is in 3 parts. All I'm going to say, 3 is the simplest form of a pattern. Your message should be in 3 big chunks. Message objective first. I want a decision, I want action, I want commitment. Specifically, what is that? And then decide your narrative structure. I'm going to give you some examples. The beautiful thing about narrative structures is you can create your own. Here's their power, everyone. They stop a load of waffle. Blah, blah, blah. Blah, 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 blah. In the course of the last 2 weeks, 3 weeks, let's take it ever since we've been back in January, and January is a grim month. Can you reach for an emoticon, please, everyone? How many of you have been on a call, in a meeting, face-to-face or virtual, where someone has been talking and or presenting and or responding, and they're just going on, and you think, I really wish they'd stop? Has that been anyone's experience? Hopefully not now, but if it is, I apologise. How many of you have had that experience? Catherine looks thoughtful. Yes. I see some nodding. Kerry, thank you. Yes. The point about a narrative structure, everyone, is it means it helps you organise your message to be crisp, concise, compelling. That's the point of it. Let me give you some examples. Then I'm going to ask you to create your own. These are examples. They can work on any message, but you can also create different narrative structures. Here's some ones to play with. This is a narrative structure. Why this is a problem, how we can fix it, what I recommend we do next. We could be talking about anything. We could be talking about organizational stress risk. We could be talking about employee engagement. We could be talking about anything. It's just a narrative structure. Here's another one. Why do this now? Why do this specifically as opposed to anything else we could do? Let's give people a day off. Let's give people some, some free, I don't know, smoothies and massages at work once a month. Why this? And why do I need you to help me with this? That's a narrative structure. This is what's working. This is what isn't. This is what we need to do next. That's a narrative structure. Why this is a priority, or why we should make this a priority, what options we have to address it, what I need from you. Notice, everyone, there's no detail under each of these 3 parts. There is simply 3 sections to your message. Also notice how conversational my language is. That's deliberate, because I'm going to say it. This is the situation, detail, detail, detail. This is the complication, detail, detail, detail. This is what I'm asking from you to help resolve it. Detail, detail, detail. If we don't get those 3 chapters clear first, then it tends to become quite convoluted, disjointed. So I'm wondering if it would be useful. Heather, how do you feel about a mini breakout for the team? Are we up for that, or should we do it in plenary? Can I get access to the breakout rooms?
Breakouts are quite good, actually. We've been using them quite a lot, and then getting one person to feed back. I don't know whether how are we doing on time? Oh, we're all right still. We've got plenty of time. Just thinking a break at some point, but that's fine. We can.
Okay.
Do you want to put people in breakout rooms? I've got them already organised. So I can add some more people in.
Yeah, absolutely. Because I don't. Let's see if I can access the breakout rooms.
I can do that. That's okay, and I can tell you who's in which. That helps.
Yeah. Brilliant. I can see it. So I can see the breakout rooms, and it looks like I can open them as well, Heather, which is brilliant. Okay.
Yeah, perfect. Okay.
Yeah, all good.
I think we might have to start. All right, we'll go. Right, perfect. I've added all the people, apart from you, I've added all the people who've just joined us into another room.
Okay,
So that's
brilliant.
all good. And then, how long do you want your breakout room for?
Well, let me, before I answer that question, just check how much for a break time do we need to give everyone on the call?
So you've got 90 minutes in total. Actually, to be honest, I think if you finish just sort of 5-10 minutes before the end, that would work, because
Brilliant.
most of our guys either joined us or they just had a 5-minute break just before you joined us.
Brilliant. Let's do that. So what I'm going to do in a minute, everyone, is I'm going to open up breakout rooms. You'll probably only be in there for about 7 or 8 minutes. Do a quick screen grab or a snip of what you see on the screen. I'll drop it in a broadcast note. What am I asking you to do in your breakout rooms? I'm asking you to pick one message from one of the audience in the breakout rooms and say, okay, let's help get clarity on what's the objective for this message? Decision, action, commitment. Let's get specific. What's the why should I care? Why is this important? Why is this a priority? Why here? Why now? And what's the narrative structure? If you don't get all of that done, don't worry. But we'll see what we get in 10 minutes by giving you the chance to take the first 3 concepts and apply them. So I'm going to hit open the breakout rooms now, and you should be very gently nudged away, everyone. Have some fun with your colleagues and let's see what you come up with. So welcome back, everyone. Just to plug us into what we were talking about before we had a break, you were in a breakout room where we were asking you in your breakout room to think about a message that's relevant for the audience and to think about the 3 things that we talked about before we went into the breakout room. Message objective, narrative structure, what's the why? Do we have anyone who'd be brave enough to share what they talked about in their breakout room so that we can all learn?
I don't mind.
Outstanding, Catherine. Thank you.
Our objective was for SLT to commit to an organisational stress risk assessment and show support by leading on relevant team comms and releasing colleagues to be part of a steering group.
Okay.
The why was, obviously we've made some of this stuff up. Data shows an increase in work-related stress and related absences. Pulse survey indicates high workload and a view that that communication in the organisation is poor. Colleague engagement is down by X. By not doing anything, we risk ABC. And then the narrative structure would be why, how, so what.
Okay. So first of all, team, can you reach for the reactions button and give some appreciation to Catherine for being brave enough and kind enough to go first. Catherine, thank you very much indeed. I really do appreciate you for that. So a couple of observations. Number 1, it sounds like that in your perspective, you're after a decision and you're after action and you're after commitment. What I particularly like is how you break those out. So when I'm asking senior leaders for things, I use the language. I'm after action, which is this. I'm after a decision, which is this. No worries, Wellbeing. I'm after commitment, which is this. So strong continue on all of those. In terms of the why the more we can make our why about the things that the audience cares about, their metrics, their priorities. We all know that wellness is a business enabler. So if we've got data, if we've got evidence, if we've got research that says organizations that don't invest in wellness, this is the impact on sales, profitability, long-term absence, employee engagement, leavers, people who stay, people who go. Whatever we can do to articulate the why in the terms that our audience cares about, the more compelling it is. You know, this is how much more profitable businesses are when they invest in wellness. That's really important. I love that you had that first in your narrative structure, and that I heard 3 sections of it. So well done, Catherine, to you in your breakout room. Everyone, the first 3 tools I've given you, I cannot stress how powerful they are to the organization and impact of your message if you apply them with rigor. Sorry that you keep getting kicked out, Elle. It's definitely not personal. We'll see what we can do to help you with that. But if we don't get those 3 right, quite frankly, everything else is a waste of your time and theirs. So I start with those first 3 tools deliberately. I'm not going to ask the other breakout rooms to share, not because I don't care or don't value the contributions and the conversations that you've had. Far from it. It's that what I want to do is make sure, particularly as we've had a break, and by the way, adapt, improvise, and overcome, which is the strapline of the US Marines, is what we're going to do, to make sure we cover the content and have the break and give you time for questions. I'm going to say thank you in a heartfelt way to the other rooms, and know that your conversations and contributions were not in any way meant to be disregarded. I want to give you the remaining tools. You've had 3. Here comes tool number 4, and I'm going to ask a question. How long do you think you've got when you're talking to someone, whether it's virtually or in person? How long do you think you've got before they start to kind of zone off into another world and we lose their attention, if we're not being rigorous in applying these tools to engage our audience? How long do you think you've got, everyone, before attention starts to wane? Any guesses, either in chat? 3 seconds, says Al. Yeah, and look how quick that came in. Yeah, so data from the airline industry, 5 minutes, asks Christina. Data from the airline industry going back to customer service, 10 seconds, says Sarah Morel. Or Meryl, forgive me, Sarah, if I've mispronounced your name. Would suggest 4 seconds, but I think it's less than that now, particularly with the advent of mobile technology, eyeball data. The speed with which we decide whether or not we're going to stay on a screen is now in portions of seconds. My point is that tool number 4 is what I call the hook or attention grabber. I'm going to show you a detailed analysis of what the evidence of this survey says. You know, I've already lost interest. A hook or an attention grabber could be any one of the following. It's not meant to be theatrical. It's not meant to be over the top. It serves a very specific purpose in the world of communication, everyone, and it is this. If my diary is packed, my day is long, and my team's pings and emails are coming in while you're listening to this idiot, what you want to do with a hook is cause the audience right at the beginning of you starting to speak to think to themselves, I'm going to lean in and keep listening. That's the purpose of a hook, versus, oh, this idiot is talking. Oh, look, here's a text. Excellent. I'll just progress my Amazon order. How's that going? Versus lean out and check out. That's the challenge we face in this environment as never before. We work in a world where most people aren't listening most of the time. We work in a distraction environment in the virtual space. If you're off camera, you're invisible. If you're on mute, you're silent. It's never been harder to get the audience's attention. The tool that can help you get the attention at the start, and it's right at the start, is the tool of the hook or attention grabber. A hook or attention grabber could be a statistic, a fact, a rhetorical question, It could be a visual. It could be a graph on the screen. It could be a voice of our customer or voice of our citizen if we work in the public sector. Something that causes the audience to think, that's interesting, I'll keep listening. Examples in your world. How much money do you think we lost last year by not investing in wellness? What was it that, I can't quote them, so I'll just say, what was it that the chief executive of ABC company said before they were fined $22 million for not investing in the well-being of their people? What do you think their words were when they were quoted in the paper? So a hook or attention grabber in our communication is designed to get the audience to think, I'm going to keep listening. And it needs to be right at the beginning. That's tool number 4. Tool number 5 is something which I recognize we're a global audience. I recognize that we work in a multicultural context. Any language and any culture has its own use of metaphor and analogy. And when we are communicating with people who are paying us the courtesy of speaking what is certainly for me, my native language, which is English, I recognize that they're already working harder than I am. So what we're not wanting to do is to make it even harder for an audience who is speaking English as their second or third language to understand what the heck I'm saying. But tool number 5, which is metaphor and analogy, is incredibly powerful because it can turn what is otherwise potentially a complicated, detailed, dare I suggest, sometimes a little dusty message into a message that packs a punch. Let me give you some examples. A metaphor is saying something that is not literally true. So if I'm just looking at Sharon and I said, Sharon has a heart of gold, that is not literally true. Her heart muscle is not made of that particular metal. But what it is saying is she's a good person. If I were to say, Kerry and Sarah Daniels are as thick as thieves, I'm not saying they're intellectually dense and I'm not saying they're morally bankrupt. What I'm saying is they're close. That's analogous. That's an analogy. So things like, this is like shutting the door after the horse has bolted. That tends to translate quite well as to, this is a bit of a wasted effort. Is the juice worth the squeeze? That's another metaphorical example that suggests, is it really worth doing? This is like trying to pin jelly to a wall. Okay, well, we get that. Nigh on impossible. It's like trying to scream underwater. That's definitely not possible. So metaphor and analogy can be a really powerful way to punch through. So as a tool to go into your communication toolbox, I definitely put it there for you to play with. Don't think, gosh, I've got to fill my communication with metaphor and analogy. I'm saying it can be a really powerful addition to the way in which you punch your message through, particularly when you're sharing data, particularly where you're sharing process methodology or rigor. Give me a metaphor, give me an analogy that helps me, for all I need to know, understand the value of what you're telling me. That's its impact. That's tool number 5. Let me offer you tool number 6. Late departed, but Steve Jobs was a master storyteller. My question for the audience is this: not the technology, but what is the purpose of the brown envelope that is in his left hand? It's not a facetious question. It's not a condescending question. It's a question based on gauging people's sort of timeline. What's the purpose of the envelope in business? Elle, you're saying create anticipation of visuals. Thank you. What's the purpose of that brown envelope, everyone? What did it used to be? Let me frame it like that. Some of us will be of a certain vintage and will know. Others of us will be thinking, I've no clue. A large paycheck, Christina. Loving your work, and I wish that that was so. Elle, our pay packet. Wouldn't that be fantastic?
I'm going to show my age. It's intern mail
It was.
that would go around the office.
Absolutely, Deb, thank you. Catherine said the same, Liz said the same. Now, why am I talking about that? So did Kerry. Because prior to email, for those of us thinking, I'm not sure what that was, that is exactly correct. The way that we used to communicate with each other was we print off pieces of paper, we type it on a typewriter or rudimentary computers, print it off, put it in an envelope, and someone would wander around twice a day, pick it up, and wander around the rest of the office on a trolley to distribute it. Now, you might be thinking, what's that got to do with anything? Well, what it's got to do with anything is as follows. Steve Jobs knew how to get an audience to engage. Apple was not the first technology structure organization in the United States that had a legal structure to go and invest in technology. Apple wasn't the first company to create flat screen TVs. Apple wasn't even the first company that came up with slide technology that we're all using today. But why organizations really aligned behind Steve Jobs was because he could really make people think, wow. Now, what you're looking at is a screen grab of the 2008 launch of the MacBook Air. And for those of us that can recall, prior to the MacBook Air, computers were quite heavy. IBM used to give their staff backpacks, and they put these bricks in their backpacks and wander around. And when the technology media, regulators, and press were called together, and Steve Jobs launched the MacBook Air back in 2008, when he pulled that computer out of that envelope, which is a tiny bit bigger than an A4 envelope, everyone went bananas. Whooping and cheering and hollering, and kind of, you can still see the clip, you can see the whole press launch on YouTube today. Now, again, you might be thinking, so what? Who cares? What he did in a very theatrical and powerful way that we can do in our own authentic, not theatrical, but equally effective way is create in our communication to engage people what are called STAR moments. Now, STAR is an acronym. So my question for the audience is this. What do you think it stands for? What do you think STAR stands for? Any guesses? Situation?
Oh, no.
No worries.
I was going to go stimulate thinking and response.
Thinking and response, loving your creativity. Rosie, your hand is up.
Situation, task, action, response, result.
Groovy. Thank you. Okay. I appreciate all of your creativity, and I'm going to link it to Elle's comment in chat. The reason I'm giving this example and why it relates to you today is as follows. What your communication needs to do is have in it moments that do this. STAR moments. STAR moments are something they'll always remember. Most communication is instantly forgettable. Most communication is instantly forgettable. Who the hell knows what she was talking about? What is a STAR moment? It could be a fact, it could be a quote, it could be a statistic, it could be a rhetorical question. But if we want to engage people with our message around an organizational stress risk assessment, we won't do that if when they leave our conversation, it's kind of forgotten. We want through our messaging for them to be thinking about what it was we said, what it was we asked, what it was we shared, what insights we gave, that are the things that when they go home at the end of the day and reflect on their own day, something they'll always remember. People in your life who are either funny or fascinating, when they speak with you, when you spend time with them, it's the human condition. You will take some of the things that they say and you will remember it. Then you start quoting it and repeating it. Something they'll always remember is what in any engaging communication we're looking to create as many of those as possible. STAR moments. And linking, if I said there were 7 elements of a persuasive message, linking where we started with where we conclude in terms of the components, I would say this. Very often, when people are finished, whether it's they're making a point in a meeting, whether or not it's sharing some information, whether or not it's doing a presentation, usually the last words that they say are this: thank you. Cue applause or non-applause, cue someone else taking over. We shouldn't do that. If we want to engage people, if we want to persuade people, where we finish is where we started, i.e. we open up the discussion, or we look to get the response to what we're saying by asking the question. And the question that we're asking is directly linked to the objective that we set. So once we've finished our communication, we say, look, so really what that means I'm asking for from this room today is a decision. And the decision is, would you be willing to give me 2 people for a month to put together an organizational stress risk assessment or an employee engagement survey or whatever it is? And that's the question. It's called the handoff, then hands off to get the audience to give you a response. And what you're doing through your ask is you're making sure that now the discussion or interaction or the next part of the conversation is directly linked to the thing that you are there to achieve. And I would really encourage us to avoid words like alignment. Are we all in agreement? People will look at you, people will nod, people will say nothing, and then they'll leave. And actually, we don't want that response to be passive. We want it to be active. We want people to say, Sarah, I love that idea. Sarah, I'm worried about this. Great, let's talk about it. How do we make it more comfortable for you? Where could we find the money? What else is missing in this message for you to be able to say yes next time? You want interaction and you want activity. What you don't want is, thank you. There's no responsibility on the audience to reply. Great, she's done now, I'm off. So always ask for it. So my ask, and I would even use the language of my ask of this audience, because what that does is signal people's increase in intention because they know something's coming where they've got to indicate whether or not they're going to give it. Final thought before we come to questions. You can have a gorgeously well-structured message. You can apply all of these tools and you will still fail to achieve the result that you want. Why? Because of all of these other areas that our time doesn't give us the opportunity to explore. Consensus gets built one person at a time. If we're trying to get a whole executive team to buy into the idea of organizational stress risk assessment, the worst way to do it is to say, I'm going to pitch to the board, but I've not spoken to anybody individually. I've got no advocates. I've got nobody on my side. The meetings before the meetings are key. Lots of poor verbal bad habits. People and people waffle off the point, people use too many, this is CTQ for SLAs, and we need to put on our TADs to make this right for MBBs. Acronyms, people do upspeak all the time. That makes it sound like you're asking a question and aren't confident. There are lots of verbal tics or bad habits. People speak too quickly. You can tell that's my lifelong journey of practice and improvement. Remember where we started, everyone. Does the size of my ask fit the amount of time and strength of the relationship that I have with these people? Think A to Z. Sometimes we need to go A to D, D to P, P to Q, Q to Z. Think about it like that. Detail and data doesn't tell anybody anything. Detail and data doesn't tell a story. Data never speaks for itself. Detail never speaks for itself. The research never speaks for itself. We do. And the over-reliance on lots and lots of data. Please don't misunderstand me. We need credentialed data, but we make the data come alive. And that often means translating a lot of expertise into the key so whats. This is a Sarah expression. Blah, blah, blah. Blah, 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 blah. Blah, blah, blah. Just too much blah, blah, blah. Crisp, concise, and compelling. Beware of slides. You will see this is visually the most dense slide in this whole deck. That's for a reason. Because to look and to listen at the same time is not only mentally exhausting, but there's something called cognitive overload. If what we are doing is throwing up lots of slides with lots of detail, we cannot look and listen to two messages which are not entirely consistent. Our brain will default to one or the other. And as with anything in relation to communication, sometimes it doesn't work. You can measure your communication. Did I get what I want by the end of the message? Did I get the decision? It's yes or no. Did I get the action? Yes, I did. No, I didn't. And sometimes we don't. And the easiest thing in the human condition is to think, well, they're awkward, or they're difficult, or they're unreasonable, or they're silly, or whatever. We blame others instead of saying, I could be more curious about what they need to hear in what I'm saying to make what I'm saying more compelling. And rather than try and guess that, let's follow up and find out. So that the next time I have the conversation, I can look to shift the needle more meaningfully. So I know that we've covered a lot of ground. I'm also mindful that our time together will come to the close at the bottom of the hour. So what I have for you is a question. What are you going to do about what we've talked about today? That's one question, because some of you will be thinking about that immediately. And others of you will be thinking, well, I'm thinking about this, or I'm thinking about that. So the other option of my question to invite you to consider is, what's going through your mind based on what we've covered over the last hour and 23 minutes? What questions do you have? Sarah, Meryl, you've raised your hand. Thank you.
Yeah, I think my big takeaway is the A to Z. So coming up with a plan as to what we're asking first. So rather than the whole package, breaking it down and what's the first step.
Totally, Sarah. Some asks you'll never get in one conversation. So break it down. Lovely. Some actions are coming through too. What action are you going to take based on what we've talked about today? See some of those coming through. Fabaruni. Rosie, please, your hand is up, please.
I'm actually thinking that this is going to be very much dependent on the opportunity and when it arises. So I don't think blundering in even with the best crafted message is going to get me where I need to go. So I actually think I need to have my message well crafted and practiced so that I can capitalize on the opportunity when it occurs.
I completely agree with that. And I think that's a phenomenal action to take for all of us. Rehearsing, crafting, even recording, re-listening, so that your message is fluent and concise and in your back pocket would be a brilliant action. And probably more than one message, actually, Rosie. I think that's a fabulous question. Elle, please, your hand is up. Let me come to you before I go to Graham. Elle, please.
Yeah, along the similar lines, really, which is breaking it down. Like, I know my overall objective, and it's a big objective, but what are the smaller asks that we can start getting buy-in and start slowly, gradually getting the buy-in, so that as we work up to the bigger asks, we already have people on board?
Correct. Brilliant. Agreed. Absolutely agreed. Elle, thank you. Appreciate you for coming on. Mike, thank you. Graham, please, your hand is up, please.
Yeah, I think I've raised this a couple of times in the breakout rooms that we've had and things like that. And I think it's very important when you're dealing with internal colleagues and things like that. You have to know your audience, and you have to know the people as not as friends and things like that, or we're friendly with each other. But to get the message across, I think you have to aim it in the right way. I've got a 2-hour strategy meeting tomorrow, so there's some things I'll pull out of this, particularly the what works, what not, and what next narrative, things like that, which was very useful. And we'll see how I get on with that tomorrow.
Graham, I completely agree with you. And to your point, before I come to Kerry, another action for all of us to make it targeted in the right way to the audience, as Graham suggests. If we don't yet know the priorities, the metrics, the key performance indicators of the audience that we're trying to persuade, that will be a really good piece of work to go find out. Kerry, please, your hand is up.
Hi, yes. So not something you've mentioned, Sarah, but something I've noticed that you do, as opposed to what I do when I'm presenting, is you talk less. You don't waffle. You give pauses and opportunities for people to speak and think. And I think that really helps to deliver a concise message. So yeah, not something that was on your slides, but something I found really interesting.
Well, Kerry, I think our challenge for all of us in the virtual world is it's easy for people to be distracted. So the more we build in some of that interaction, the better it is. Absolutely. Graham, your hand went back up, you good person.
Yeah, it's just in reaction to what Kerry's just said. This probably isn't the best choice of examples, but if you really wanted to, watch old YouTube videos of Adolf Hitler managing a crowd, and watch how he talks and stands there silently till everybody shuts up, and then he starts to speak. He doesn't start speaking over people and things like that. So that was something somebody pointed out to me many years ago. I did a professional trainer's course, and it wasn't exactly a recommendation, but somebody said you need to watch Adolf Hitler manage a crowd. Horrible example, I know, but it was very effective.
It certainly was, unfortunately so. Graham, grateful to you. Thank you. Rosie, please, your hand is up, please.
Graham, the other person, and perhaps in a more modern context, who was really good at that was Tony Blair, especially in the early years.
Watching any politician, thank you, Rosie. Watching any politician is a really fascinating insight. And my thought for all of us is that whilst we may not be in the business of politics, we're definitely in the business of influence. And that's certainly as far as the connection between us and politicians, I would suggest, goes. I know that our time is coming to a close. I know we've hit the bottom of the hour. I know you've had a busy and full day. So I'm heartfelt in my thanks for your time and your energy and your attention. I leave you with the question of action, because knowing is never the same as doing. Go play and practice. Challenge yourself around what action you're going to take. And in support of that, I'll follow up with Heather to make sure that you've got the digital asset that reinforces this session. And of course, you can always contact me if you've got any questions. And no, I'm never going to try and market or sell anything to you. I want you to use these tools because they work. Heather, I'm mindful of your time. I'm mindful of this audience's time. And I'm heartfelt in saying thank you for letting me share the last hour and a half with you.
Thank you, Sarah. Honestly, every time I listen to you, I'm like, oh, I've got so much work to do to get better at this. And I'm sure we're all in the same boat. Thank you so much, Sarah. So you're going to send me slides or a booklet or something?
I will do that now. I will do that now. Get in your inbox in the next 10.
Perfect. Thank you so much, Sarah. Thank you. And yes, you may not wanting to be market to them, but you know, if you do want Sarah to talk to your health and safety team or your HR team or what have you, I'm sure she's available to do that. Brilliant. Thank you so much. Have a wonderful rest of the day.